Hello, welcome to the channel. Welcome back to everyone. It's been a while since I've made a video, but going to change things up, and I think we're going to have a look at some interesting old dinosaur books that I have on my shelf. So today's article is a book from 1991, I believe, called Dinosaur Identifier. I've had this book a very long time, as you can tell by the the state of it. Yeah, it's 1 year older than I am, and interesting read. So we'll dive in. We'll have a quick look through, see what things pop to mind, and yeah, enjoy this old dinosaur literature. So on the front cover you can see we've got some wonderful pictures. A guy stood next to like a diplodocid up there. We've got a famous fossil of Archaeopteryx in the background. Heterodontosaurus skull, some sort of insectivorous dinosaur. A version of Oviraptor, or another egg eating dinosaur. I think this book came from the time when we still thought it was eating the eggs of Protoceratops. Sauropod foot and some sort of Allosauride maybe? Or Carnosaurus. Anyway, let's have a look. It's by Steve Parker. Ignore the stains. This is a very old book, the pages tend to go a bit yellow. There we are. So it's published in 1991, reprinted in 1995. So yeah, we'll see what great things were being said in those times. It's context broken up into different sections. Most of it's the different dinosaur groups, I guess you could call them, with sort of before and after as well. So I've already had a very quick look through this, so I know kind of what's coming. So you got the introduction, tells you about dinosaur names, about what dinosaurs are, a little bit about fossils and things like that. Some very interesting pictures. This is the art style. I wish I knew who drew these. If I can find it, I'll put it in the description. But got some lovely pictures, watercolour pictures, which are present throughout the book. We've got dinosaur distributions, which is cool, including upper and low Cretaceous, which is nice, upper and low Jurassic, and then mid to upper Triassic, which is quite nice actually. You can put all this together with how the continents would have shifted. And aside from Antarctic dinosaurs, it pretty much seems to cover every continent. And this is obviously before a lot of the really good finds were found in Mongolia and China, so yeah, it's a nice distribution there. We've got a little bit about fossilization and about geologic time and things like that, because that leads into a very brief history of the world. The world was dust and fire. I really like this picture actually. I've seen a couple of different things like this, and I really like this one because it gives you a really good representation for just how much of the time the Earth was uninhabited by anything, just there, first living cells. But the dinosaurs were only this little bit at the top here, and then where this tiny little bit at the end. So it's a really nice evolution representation, which I like. It talks about dinosaurs as reptiles. I think I've had a look through, I can't find any reference to dinosaurs being birds. So I think this might have been before that was really fully in inverted commas, accepted. So yeah, at the end it talks about dinosaurs being completely extinct, so, you know, yeah, there's that. Don't think there's any mention of feathers either. I mean, the Oviraptor on the front was featherless, so yeah. We've got a dinosaur breakdown of their radiations and groups, with some very old styles of drawing. This book's interesting in that it shows a lot of dinosaurs with their tails on the ground, and then other ones without. So, but they all look like they've been done by the same artist. So whether or not it was just different findings, I don't know. But a lot of them seem to have the tails on the ground and things like that. So we'll have a good look and a good laugh as we go through that. Things like, I mean, we've still got the two groups, so sauropods and theropods being close together, and everything else sort of being secondary radiation here. But I think this order's changed a lot in modern times, and it depends whether or not you follow the Ornithoscelida belief system in how, not belief system, but if everything evolved that way. But hey-o, this has changed a little at a time, but it's still quite relevant. Pachycephalosaurs and ceratopsids are quite close together, which is good. We've got Thyreophora, and then obviously ornithopod radiations. Interesting how it all radiated in Triassic, though. I think some of it radiated later on, and they've missed, or haven't got, obviously, the radiation of Titanosaurs there. Anyway, got a wonderful picture. I like pictures like this. Fossil or bone, and then adapting it into muscle, soft tissue, and eventually into skin. I will say I don't think there's enough soft tissue on musculature on here. I don't think you'd have the ribs like this. I think there'd be layers of muscle over the top of that. You'd probably have muscles over the top. I mean, I know a lot of the jaw muscles will go up through the holes, but I think you'd still have some musculature over the surface of the face like we do. Especially blood vessels and things like that. I mean, the legs are alright. You've kind of got the pads under the feet. And the skin covering, obviously, the skin covering. I think the head looks a bit too small, personally, on that. At least the frill does. I mean, it's supposed to be a Triceratops, as that's obvious. It's got a really funky worm texture for the tail, which I don't think is very accurate. I like the sort of build-up of skin around the limbs, but again, I think it's too far down. You'd have it a bit further up. You've got some big muscles that are coming in here, especially in the legs, going further back. A lot of older reconstructions and things like that tended to have the limbs come up right to the top, but really, especially with the anchorage from the tail, you'd have all the muscles coming back, and the leg would be a bit wider here. But yeah, it's still, I love any interesting drawings like that, anything that shows off the insides, so that's cool. What is good about this is that they show that the horns are bigger when it's covered in soft tissue, so they are covered in a chitinous covering, which is a nice attention to detail. Just talk about holes in the head, talks about diapsids, synapsids, anapsids. Does talk about how we don't have a lot of fossils, so there are big gaps in the fossil record, which is interesting to remember. It does separate out pterosaurs and marine reptiles. This only talks about dinosaurs, which is cool. We move on to dinosaur origins. A lovely fossil of an ichthyosaur, which is cool. So it talks about the origins of dinosaurs, mass extinction between at the end of the Triassic period, or towards the end, well, Permian Triassic, and then it does mention the extinction between the Triassic and Jurassic period. Yeah, and it gives you a breakdown of where the continents were, how they split, and then we get into sort of the late Triassic megafauna, really. So the rhinoceros, crocodile-like reptiles, crocodiles themselves. I mean, this is Protosuchus, so it's a Triassic crocodilomorph. Just talk about convergent evolution as well, which it mentioned briefly with the ichthyosaur earlier, which is cool. It does talk briefly about the skies and the seas, and then we move on to this guy who's on the front. So this guy is actually supposed to be Pseudophytus. I'll give everyone 10 seconds to point out flaws with these pictures as we come along with them. I mean, it looks beautiful. Don't get me wrong. Like, I love the green, and if it comes on the camera, I love the purple stripes. The stance is interesting. We've got one that's very much sort of like bent over with bunny hands. Obviously these would be, they wouldn't be able to hold them like that, and they'll be holding them sideways. We've got one who seems way more upright, but he is reaching for this dragonfly. And then one who's kind of looks like a duck or a swan, like he's got the S shape. As far as I'm aware, these are all pretty wrong. I mean, his knee looks weird. I think he's supposed to bring his leg forward, but it looks like he's kind of like touching the grass with the sand with his foot. Yeah, obviously, so the arms are obviously not correct on most of these. I think his is closest to being true in that it looks like it's held like that. The head is interesting. It looks a little small to me. I think it's missing the tooth notch. So there's a tooth notch at the beginning of the mouth, between the premaxillary and the maxillary. And yeah, it doesn't seem to have it on here. I think it might have the teeth going too far back actually, but I'd have to have like a skull. That's the dentary bone. Yeah, it's an odd look for a coelophysis tooth head. We haven't got one face on, so I don't know if they've got the right triangular shape. I mean, it's obviously identifiable as something other than a tyrannosaur or something like that. It doesn't have the typical theropod head, but it could use a little bit more work on that front. But beautiful colours, and I love the watercolours for the plants and things. Can't deny that. And nice shadow work as well, actually. Shadows following it all through. Anyway, it talks about coelophysis itself, talks about dinosaurs rising to prominence. And then we move over to an actual section on early dinosaurs, so a little bit before that. Heterantosaurus holding his little fan. Not a bad representation, but again, it's too vertical. A lot of dinosaurs have this problem. They look like sort of kangaroos. Short, really windy tails. He's using its hands to hold the branch though, which is interesting, and it does have, you can just see the sharp teeth at the front. Maybe not too many though. It's difficult to tell with this small of a picture. I think we only have the two fangs, and then it has like sort of incisors at the front. But interesting anyway. It does mention dinosaur hips. So Saurischians and Ornithischians. It shows the difference there with the ischius and pubis being separate and then being together. It does mention about birds. No. It did mention eliciting bird hips. Strange birds themselves probably did not evolve. Lizard hips talk, their hips became much bigger. Yeah, so it doesn't mention that Saurischian dinosaurs became birds, but it does mention the birds didn't evolve from bird hips. Science is fun like that. I think it moves on to early Saurischians. We've got a lovely representation of posture, which is one of the big defining traits of dinosaurs, obviously. Upright posture, limbs beneath the body. So it does talk about sprawling posture, like a lizard, semi-erect it calls here, like a crocodilian, and then a good representation of fully erect underneath the body legs. We do have a little picture of Dilophosaurus. This is obviously changed in recent times. I mean, tail on the ground, like a really, really long tail on the ground. It's not really beefy enough. Arms are like reverse pronated, which is interesting. It looks big, which is nice because it was a big predator. For instance, well, it was probably one of the biggest at the time. But a lot of the other aspects look way more like a two-legged Komodo dragon. You know, you've got a foot here. You've not really got any like defining which toes are which. Which is the middle toe, which is the first toe and the third toe. Hands, yeah, it just looks like a two-legged Komodo dragon. Obviously they've got the ridge, but that's changed in recent times, so have a look about that, Google that. They haven't got the notch, which interestingly enough is now potentially more accurate. We're unsure exactly how much lip coverage there was. It looks like he's got lips actually. So we don't know how much the notch that's between the maxillary and the premaxillary, which you can see in terms of there's a gap in the teeth here. We don't know how much of that would actually have been visible. It's obviously very visible on the skeleton, but in real life we're not sure. We're now going back towards there being sufficient lip coverage that you wouldn't really notice it unless it had its mouth wide open. So that's an interesting reverse of what's accurate and what's not. And more lovely colours, lovely watercolours. Love a bit of watercolour. They're all on sand as well. Interesting, they all lived in the desert apparently. We have a Platysaurus hand, or forelimb, which is cool. We have Platysaurus here, and again, as with a lot of these, and I'll mention it probably every time, the posture is wrong. The tail is on the ground. It would have to be way more sort of across. Now, especially as a juvenile could probably have walked and run on two legs. As an adult, we're not so sure. But it wouldn't have had a posture like this. It would have been way more horizontal. The head is missing. Well, it's hard to tell. It looks like it's missing some of the downward swoop that the mouth would have. The head still looks a bit small. All these dinosaurs have very small heads. Yeah. Not really sure what to say that, and I'm not going to repeat myself on. It's not beefy enough. Like, you need a really big, beefy arms, I think. Beefier legs is a common trope with these sorts of drawings. And the musculature just looks like a column. Look, that's what I mean about Komodo dragon lookingness. It's like a column rather than it being like a properly defined leg. With the ankle down to the toes. Not too bad here. Interesting. Favourite. Anyway, continuing on, we've got the picture of Heterodontosaurus again. It's got a little throat waddle, which is like speculative, entirely reasonable, I guess. Rhynchosaurus, looking nice and shiny. These types of pictures, I don't know if it's a different artist or what, tend to look more accurate, but they all look really shiny. And I can't comment on the tail on the ground because it is trying to climb a tree, so, you know, I'm going to leave that where it is. 5 toes again. 4 in the hand, which is fine. Heterodontosaurus skull. So yeah, I think if you look at that and then sort of move across to its teeth. Come on, focus. It might have too many. It's difficult to tell. Similar picture before, it's actually a different picture. There you go. And Sculosaurus making its appearance, of course. Decent enough. Again, I think the tail is probably too low. Would follow the back, I think, a bit more. At least it's not on the ground yet. Oh, it's close. It's not long enough to be on the ground. So we're getting to sauropods now, or giant plant eaters. See if you can see how many of them are pointing to the ground. So yes, this is good dirt. I like this dirt. So we're moving across the Diplodocus now. What's that you say? Diplodocus has a long rat-like tail? Sure does. It has an upright neck? Sure does. Yeah, so not terribly accurate Diplodocus really. I mean, I know some people argue that it probably could have held its neck upwards like that. I'm more of the walking with dinosaurs kind of midpoint neck holdy upness. Otherwise, it's competing really with similar specimens in its environment. Wouldn't have the tail on the ground. Nice long held out tail. I'm not going to get into the argument about whether or not I use it as a whip, because that's just silly, really, in my opinion. It's like me, if I whip my arm, I'm probably going to break all the bones in my arm, but there you go. Moving on. Some more nice sauropod designs. We've got Brachiosaurus back again. I think... so we've got Brachiosaurus here. Probably the other one. I think this is more Giraffatitan than Brachiosaurus. Interestingly, they haven't put the nose. Focuses. Focus, please. Focus, please. No, they haven't. Oh no, they put two noses on. Okay, I take it back. I was going to praise them on the nose at the end of the snout. But from looking at this, it's got two noses. One there and one there. So, alright. I'm going to take back that praise. Should probably have a fleshy covering there. But, yeah, it's Brachiosaurus. Recognisable. Looks like it's got simple peg teeth, which is nice. Got the claws, got the big first claw. I'm not so sure about the rest of the toes. I think only the first, second, third would have had claws. Tail on the ground again. But what are you going to do? Quite rat-like. So it talks about sauropods. Apatosaurus just looking like some god-awful, I don't know, it's like a kiwi fruit with legs. So that's interesting. I mean, I'm not even going to comment on that. You guys just, yeah, have fun with that. Point to the ground again. Good sand. Terrible drawing, good sand. Jesus Christ. Wait, straight back up again. Wonderful. Mamenchisaurus, which isn't too... But it's got the long, characteristic long neck. But I think it needs to be way more upright. Sauropods are always good for a laugh sometimes. It does mention Tenatosaurus here, which is actually an ornithopod. Well, that's because it's talking about methods of digestion. So stones and sauropods and manual processing in the mouth by ornithopods. It mentions Saltosaurus, which has the armour at the back. No tailstone. But they do have the armour, which is cool. Though its legs look like they're connected up there, like little pillars. It's a big chest, but no connecting tissue. That needs to be connected through there. Tail should probably be higher again. That's a very diplodocid looking head as well, which is cool. Teeth at the tip. It's very important when you look at diplodocids. See how many of them are drawn with teeth all the way back. They only have teeth at the front for... Well, I was going to say for pegging plants, but that's not probably the right thing to say. Pegs for stripping plants of their leaves. We've got a picture of me looking at some dinosaur bones. It talks about the legs and the size and things like Ultrasaurus, which I'm not sure is actually... I'm not sure it's actually a valid taxon now. Someone correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Interestingly, probably should be more pillar-like if it's going to represent a later titanosaur. Basically they became pillars with the feet and legs and titanosaurs, and it lost all its toes. Well, it lost all its nails. It just became a big pillar of flesh. With me being unsure about the taxon of Ultrasaurus now, I'm not going to really comment on that too much. We move on to everyone's favourite section, the terrible flesh eaters. Because, you know, if you eat flesh, you are terrible apparently. There you go. These will show all sorts of interesting pictures actually, considering the fact that a lot of the earlier ones had tails on the floor. Some of these do and some of them don't. It really depends if they were viewed as more active or not. So I think the more active ones, like Deinonychus here, tend to have this kind of posture, which is cool. And some of the larger ones, which I think were still being viewed as potentially just scavengers, look way more like weird and bulky and tails on the ground and all that stuff. Nice view of a Megalosaurus skull? Allosaurus skull? Allosaurus, yes, Allosaurus skull. And take note of the ridges that are actually put in the skull drawing, because they're not in the actual picture of Allosaurus. Mentions Megalosaurus, of course. English book, English dinosaurs. Yeah, there's Allosaurus. So, where is its head adornment gone? And of course, all the meat-eating dinosaurs look scary and red and big red eyes, sharp teeth, and one weird tooth right in the middle of my jaw. There's odd lips though. Lips is cool. I like lips. Just the hands again. It's trying to find, it's like gold dust trying to find an unpronated arms. Has the 3 toes, but the middle one needs to be longer. Mentions the dewclaw, which is cool. Tail isn't on the ground, which is interesting. But the posture is probably too hunchbacked, really. He is, however, he looks robustly built. He looks like a powerful predator. He's got a powerful neck. So that is a cool thing. And they don't look like half-starved birds. Tyrannosaurus, I've got to shove in here with, I'm assuming that's a corpse. Looks like it's slime trying to eat his leg, probably why he's roaring. That head is just too small for that picture. It's got the weird binding at the size of the mouth, which may or may not have been there. It's not got the front nibbly teeth, which is interesting because those front nibbly teeth are a defining characteristic of Tyrannosaurs, but there you go. So, I mean, it's stereotypical dinosaur, isn't it? Like, it has the 2 fingers, so you know it's a Tyrannosaurus, that's all they really care about. Tail's on the floor, legs and feet are just weird columns of lizard flesh. It doesn't even look like it's properly walking on its toes there. So, yeah, not the best. Big girdle though there. And to be fair, it looks like it's missing the gastralia, but I think we only properly found those later on with Sue. So I can forgive the lack of gastralia. Talks about how they would have hunted. It talks about them walking really rather than running, which is interesting. Like I said, I think this leans towards the scavenger route for the larger theropods. But there you go. A really weird ass picture, which I'll get to in a minute. It does talk about the different bones in the leg, which is cool, about them walking on the toes. These drawings seem to be fairly accurate, but the other ones not so much. Now this is supposed to be Albertosaurus, and while I love the colouring, its leg looks weird. It's like really splayed-legged, and I know that this part, so this, as a kid, I always saw this as the back of the head connecting to the arm. What it's supposed to be is that's the line on the other side of the neck, that's the jaw, and it just happens to be that the jaw hits the same mark, so your mind carries it all the way through. Whereas when you look at it long enough, it eventually becomes the neck and not part of the arm. Because there's no way in hell that can be part of the arm, right? Oh well, still missing other taxonomic features, no nibbly teeth, just got really weird looking conical teeth, rather than steak knives. They seem to be facing all over the place. Still got the lips though, which is cool. Does have the brow adornment, and they probably should be more pronounced. I think it's missing on T-Rex. Let's turn back to the T-Rex. Yeah, they've got the brows, but a lot of the adornment's missing. Probably more adornment there. The legs do look nice and beefy, but the tail is looks too short. The stance is wrong, and it needs more musculature coming through. It's like a worm again. Big worms with legs. Tarbosaurus, because you've never had too many Tyrannosaurs. Talks about pack hunting, and they've killed some sort of dinosaur mummy. This little mouth, look. See, these guys look way more agile. Laying down like a lion too, which is cool. Not sure how much that could have been done with the ischium and pubis being the way they are. They'd be putting a lot of pressure on that front bone. And I also couldn't pronate its arms like that anyway to lay down like that. That's probably more accurate. The rest of them don't have the tails on the ground, which is cool. So the dinosaurs that this book thinks of as more active tend to have the correct tail, although it is still extremely thin and rat-like. So now we move on to egg stealers and insect snatchers, things like Gallimimus and the ostrich mimics, stuff like that. All of these, I'm going to just say now, all of these are going to have the arms like that. Nice big muscles here, but the arms just got little sticks. The legs are alright, but it needs more musculature, especially linking back to the tail, which then the tails are always too thin and too short, I think. Beautiful coloration though on all of these. All of these are really beautiful pictures. What you can say about these watercolour pictures, not very accurate, but the colours and things are really nicely picked out. And the heads, it's more like Coelophysis. That's a more accurate looking Gallimimus or Ornithomimus head. But there you go. So Struthiomimus, looking like an advert for, I don't know, 7-Up. Beautiful colours. Head's not that good. It's kind of missing the front bill, and that bottom jaw's really short. But yeah, pretty much everything I said before. It's interesting because you've got like a Struthiomimus head here, but then you move across to the actual picture and it doesn't really look that much like it. Even the hand is wrong. Like you've got a nice picture of the hand there. That would have been, and then it just becomes like a catcher's mitt, like a paw, and it really should be like that. There you go. Right number of toes though. That's good. More of the same really, Gallimimus and Ornithomimus. Beautiful colours. I really like the Gallimimus coloration. I like the green on top. He's looking very blue. Pretty much the same as I said before. Nothing new there. Let's talk about warm-blooded dinosaurs. I think we think they're now sort of what's called mesothermic, where it's kind of in the middle of warm and cold-blooded, depending on the size of the dinosaur. I mean, feathers would have evolved as a metabolic need, first of all. It tells you about the difference between exo and endothermic. Nice little pictures of a shrew. Cool. Got that picture from the front again. Oviraptor, obviously. Missing a lot of the adornments that are now commonplace. We now think that the eggs that it was found with are actually its own eggs, rather than it eating the eggs, so there you go. Odd-shaped head as well. Like it's got the right... It's got the beak and everything, but that head looks too long. Shorter head, please. Non-pronated arms for the first time, so there's your goal, right there. Horns and armour, so this is grouped Thyreophora and Marginocephalia together. We have intimate picture of it laying eggs there. It's a Protoceratops. Frills always look weird on these pictures. Picture of a Triceratops, old Triceratops design with the tail going all the way down. It's like they've got terrible back problems. Small looking frill and head. Daddy, why is this so inaccurate? It's 1991. There we go. Psittacosaurus. It's hard to tell scale from this, but it looks a bit big, but you can't really probably tell scale. But it's cool, they've got Psittacosaurus in here as a basal Magnocephalian. Although, it does mention here that Protoceratops may be able sort of into everything else, and this is, I think, this gets changed every year as to what sits where, what sits within which group, Plasmasaurines, and all that stuff. So don't pay too much attention to that. Comparison to rhinos, which is interesting. I think personally, I mean the head is small again. They're trying to make it look like a rhino, right? I think personally, for ceratopsians, they're just like four-legged, two-legged parrots, really is the way to think about it. Think about it as a four-legged ground parrot look up a kakapo and tell me that it does not look like a Stegosaurus. So think about that rather than rhinos. Rhinos are too mammalian because they're mammals. Surprise, surprise. Huge frill on the Torosaurus here, which is cool. Couldn't look at its head very far though. But I do like the exaggerated frill. Could have been a bit more vertical, I think. A little bit more head movement back and up. Needs the tail coming off the back. And just doesn't look bulky enough to me. These guys are weird. So this is supposed to be Centrosaurus. It's very much trying to go for the elephant rhino look, especially with the tails on the ground, and it just looks super weird. There you go. King of the hill up there. I tell you what. Stegosaurus tail, even though it should be on the sides and not sort of splayed out like a V. Does mention the Thagomizer. Does talk about the smallest brains, obviously. If you're talking about Stegosaurs, the walnut-sized brain pretty much always comes up. Now we move on to Stegosaurus itself. Now what's interesting is this skeletal drawing here, which isn't actually Stegosaurus. Well, it shouldn't be. It looks more like Kentrosaurus to me. Or... yeah, this isn't a Stegosaurus. I know it says below, skeleton of Stegosaurus. The plates are wrong. The head is held wrong. The legs look weird. There's not enough ribs. Well, they're not big enough. And the tail is held wrong. But then you look up here, and this picture of Stegosaurus is way more accurate. Like if you imagine this on the ground, so imagine the ground's actually there, it's not too bad. Like its tail is up. They're not on the side still, but it's got the nice big plates. It has the shorter front limbs, I mean that one does too. The head looks good. With the front beak. It's missing the throat armour, but obviously that was found much later on. But that looks like a much better picture than that. But that one's front and centre, and it's just all heaps of wrong. There you go. If you wanted to see a more up-to-date reconstruction of Stegosaurus, look up Sophie Stegosaurus. It's a fantastic sub-adult specimen. Really shows Stegosaurus as more in line with other Stegosaurs, and really just makes it look sort of more active and way more an animal than some lumbering thick beast, which is what a lot of early literature kind of described them as, especially with the small brain. You don't need a big brain to be quick, necessarily. It does mention about the plates, about them being thermoregulation rather than defense, which is cool. Probably have multiple uses, much like feathers or anything else that evolves, multiple uses. But thermoregulation is a good one, and so is display. Yeah. Moving on to the Nodosaurs and Kylosaurs, that sort of stoof. Really weird, sort of outwardly splayed legs. That would have been tucked more under rather than outwardly splayed. Head looks too small again. Just looks like a weird rhino thing. Got the banding on the things, but each plate would have been different, I think. Coelacanthus, which is one of my favourites. It does have the saddle, but the saddle is way too small. So we move on to Nodosaurs and things like that now, and more interesting representations, I guess you could call it. Little small head, probably held a bit too high off the ground. Body just looks like this armadillo round thing. Legs are an oddly splayed. Talking about the erect, semi-erect posture earlier, the legs of this one are really weirdly splayed. Almost like 10 to 2. The opposite of 10 to 2. What, 20 past 7 feet? Yeah, and obviously you've got the nodules for Nodosaurus, but it's all a bit just wrong, really. Tail on the floor. Moving across to Coelacanthus, not too bad. The tail is touching there. Should again be further up. It does have the saddle, the characteristic saddle. but it's all too small and dainty really for what it would have been. And these spikes are just kind of attached to the sides and not really arranged in their proper rows. It's like you can barely reach that water. Bessim is looking at it like, what am I? Got nice colours though. Love the purple on the Nodosaurus. Very pretty. Ankylosaurus. Before we move into Pachycephalosaurs. It is weird that they weren't in with this Ceratopsians, but there you go. Ankylosaurus, looking really tall for an Ankylosaur, with a weird sort of nodule on the back of the leg. But there you go. There wouldn't really necessarily be a dividing line like that, like between the belly and the thing. If you're looking at a squatter dinosaur, wider, built more like a tank, really. The nodule on the tail looks alright. Looks pretty good. And there is banding, but I don't think the banding's not correct in terms of where the bands sit on the body. Yeah, and the head should be armoured as well. That was basically a giant fused ball of bone. So. Weird looking Ankylosaur. I mean, it's obviously an Ankylosaur, it has the tail, but weird looking. Headbanger dinosaurs. Pachycephalosaurus. There's also going to make no mention to Dracorex, Stegosaurus, Stygimoloch, probably potentially being junior synonyms of Pachycephalosaurus. Obviously, it's not going to make any mention of that. That's quite a more recent thing. But it does mention them. Some weird grey alien looking Stegosaurus here. Again, I love the coloration. It's great. Heads look weird. And they probably wouldn't have headbutted like this anyway. And definitely not at this angle. So if you were going to do it, you'd want horizontally and have everything line up. So if that's the head, line up down the back. Like that. These sorts of animals is probably more flank butting, if that at all. So the sort of typical headbutting behaviour probably wouldn't have been actually what they were doing. One of the things with that is the surface area for connection would have been very small. If you actually look at muscox, things that do actually headbutt, it's a large surface area because it reduces the overall force being applied. If you take a snooker ball and you smack a snooker ball into it, they go flying with very little force because it's all concentrated into one place. You want a flatter surface, so there's less force coming in overall at the one point, less chance of injury, things like that. He's also wearing a mountain for a head, which is a curious fashion choice. That's it actually for the headbutters. We move on to lizard teeth and duckbills, or iguanodon and hadrosaurs. Old reconstruction of iguanodon skeleton. It's like so nearly correct, but it's got like the tail goes down rather than coming out nicely. It does have the what do you call them? Ossified tendons, which is a characteristic feature of a lot of manticosaurs, larger ones, which is good. And then you've got this thing, supposed to be Camptosaurus, but it looks like I don't know, a weird jazz-handing kangaroo, maybe? Yeah, interesting. We've got actually iguanodon, which is looking a bit, it's got the weird hand thing, but it's looking, so the hands are probably a bit more like that. Walking on its three front fingers, little finger, prehensile finger at the back, thumbs and back sticking out like that, right? So you've got semi-pronated arms. This weird, like, awkward pronated thing. Back legs are way too thin on that, not robust enough. Beautiful colour. Yeah, very grumpy stand-up kangaroos, that's what they look like. Not really that accurate. And we move along, we've got an actual, there's another hand here, which is cool. Prehensile finger, that's the foot, with a little walking toes, walking nails. Tyrannosaurus looking alright. It's actually got the, you know, its tail is like that at the back, like long extension for balance. It's got the sail. Whether or not that would be a hump or a sail depends on who you ask. That's looking alright. Still not very good, but it's looking a lot better than some of the other things on this page in terms of hadrosaurs. I think that's the only one that looks decent, actually, because the rest of them look weird. Anatosaurus, or Anatotitan. I think that's a non-valid taxon now. It's actually that one. That's Corythosaurus for dome. That's still valid. Yeah, I think there's a bit of a wastebasket taxon for the through Arthropod, but don't. It's either that or it's just not considered valid now. Again, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Keeping up to date with all this stuff when it's a hobby is interesting. Interesting skulls of Lambeosaurus, hinting at sexual dimorphism, but whether or not it's actually juvenile and adult, it's difficult to tell. It's looking a bit like an Egyptian pharaoh look. It's got a long chin looking thing. Very regal. Edmontosaurus. He's actually got like the nice big nose ornamentation there, which is nice. Weird looking hands though. 4 finger nose? He's got 4 fingers. Ah, there we go. So we've got Saurolophus, and then literally next to it, Parasaurolophus. Parasaurolophus being near Saurolophus. Very bendy. I thought they tried to squash this in, like, it's way too bendy for that. And that's probably way too straight, weirdly enough. Probably be somewhere in the middle. Looking cool, but still looking like a kangaroo. Tail on the ground. Not quadrupedal, which is what it would have been most of the time, and then I would have run on 2 legs. But you're looking at a quadrupedal animal standing on its hind and front legs, you know, maybe rearing up a little bit, so you could make the argument this one's rearing, but definitely wouldn't have had the tail on the ground, looking like a kangaroo. Kind of look like big duck cows, is a good way of thinking about it. Well, that's how I think about it. Talks about eggs, because we're moving on to Maiasaura, and whenever you talk about Maiasaura, you're always going to talk about eggs and being a good parent or not. 2 very different pictures of Maiasaurus, one that looks frankly terrifying, and one that looks much less terrifying but much less accurate. Again, so nearly correct. You've just got to follow the curve at the back of the tail. And you've got this weird sort of butt bit with the legs would probably come in. If you had a thicker tail there, support the back of the leg muscles, you wouldn't have that problem. They do have them nursing the eggs, little mounds in the ground, which is cool. Dinosaurs obviously laying hard-shelled eggs. That Maiasaur is looking a bit very square-looking head. So there's a little smile as well. Yeah, so obviously it talks about good mothers and fathers. Up for debate. It's hard to find behavioural traits like that in fossil records, but there you go. Moving over, we have last sections really. What happened to the dinosaurs? So a lovely little picture of the age of mammals, with, you know, man, woolly rhino, elephants, things like that, which is nice. And this section really just talks about the various theories for extinction. Showing dinosaurs making snow angels, and really it just covers everything from just climate change to the meteor impact, changes, dinosaurs becoming too specialised and dying out through disease, things like that, mammals eating eggs, all of the theories really. It does talk most about the meteorite. I think further evidence has come out since this was published sort of supporting it, because it does talk about like there is actually meteor impact and that sort of thing, and we've pretty much found that now, as well as the radium layer. I think it's radium. Iridium layer, which we would have got from that impact event. And interestingly, as I mentioned at the start of the video, it does say the dinosaurs were 100% extinct. Like they all went, they all died. I think it says it back Yeah. So yeah, dinosaurs no longer thunder across the Earth's surface. They all disappeared, everyone. Obviously that's not correct. Birds are dinosaurs. Birds, avian theropods, if you want to be more specific. You know, dinosaurs live on. Even past this, things like terror birds and things like that. Dinosaurs live on. So, there you are. But yeah, talked about disease. Lovely bloody dinosaur there. Syntosaurus. Poor thing. Don't look at me, I'm dying. And then a nice poignant image at the end of mammals rising to take the place of dinosaurs. Yep, there is an index. And that's it really. Yeah. So, I'll have a look at the back quick. So that's what an Ankylosaur is more like. Living tank. But anyway, yeah. History of dinosaurs, how they were discovered, mysteries and abrupt extinction. So, yeah. 1991, republished 1995. Always a good read, loved it as a kid. I thought some of the dinosaur pictures are really creepy. Sort of gave away that these are just really alien creatures really to what we have these days. Horribly inaccurate by today's standards, but this is what this is about. Looking at this old literature and enjoying it. So if you enjoyed looking at this, like the video and you can put up with me talking at length, please like, comment, subscribe, tell me what I got right, tell me what I got wrong. If you have any recommendations for old literature that I can get my hands on, let me know and I'll be happy to review those too. And until next time, everyone look after yourselves.